Hi, I'm Johnny Reynolds, also known as Johnny the Love Doctor. I created this show entitled The Everyday Man to highlight the positive side of marriage, love, and relationships. The state of relationships today are in serious trouble and have been for quite some time. When I turn on the television, radio, or social media today, all I see is drama and relationships being shown in a negative light. Everyone is falling in and out of love, but no one is talking about how to stay there. We have all these celebrities and so-called relationship experts out there trying to tell the everyday man or woman, like you and me, how to be successful in our relationships, when in actuality, they themselves aren't successful. Tell me, does that make any sense? The goal of this show is to highlight and help the everyday, hardworking 9-to-5er who has to balance work, real life issues, children, family, etc., all while trying to be the best mate they can be in a relationship at the same time. I'm here to give a voice to those who aren't being heard and help to give people the necessary tools they need in order to sustain healthy, happy relationships. At the end of the day, we all want to be happy with someone, and our own happiness is key in the success of our relationship with another person. So join me as we change the game one heartbeat at a time, right here on The Everyday Man.
Marriage is exciting because I make it my business to keep it that way. Contrary to what you may think, the honeymoon stage doesn't have to end.
Just because a relationship didn't work out in the past doesn't mean you should carry that into your future. Pain or obstacles from past relationships can be great building blocks for the success of your future ones. Trust me, I know.
A marriage can work under any circumstance. However, one of the keys to having a successful marriage is having a great teammate.
A lot of women think they are marriage material, but tend to date men who are not. Allow me to show you what marriage material is.
In a moment, I'll be joined by 4 gentlemen who are all at different stages of marriage and relationship. We're going to discuss and address some serious topics such as, how do you know when to get married? How do you handle temptation when you're in a committed relationship? What do men really look for in a woman, especially in today's dating arena? And we're going to provide some keys to success in sustaining happy and healthy relationships and much more. We're going to have a real, powerful, unscripted discussion and let you inside the mind of men who enjoy being married and in relationship. At the end of the day, a relationship is what you make it. So let's make it last. I'm your host, Johnny Reynolds. Welcome to The Everyday Man. Welcome to The Everyday Man. Again, I'm Johnny Reynolds, your host. I'm here joined today by Lemuel, Reggie, Michael, and Ed. These guys have some incredible stories about their relationships and where they are in marriage that we want to share with you guys today, and we want you to be excited about what we're going to cover. So we're going to dive right in. We want to discuss first, gentlemen, how did you know when you wanted to get married?
I knew I was ready to get married as soon as I was tired of the dating scene.
I'll say probably the same. A different situation. After my first marriage failed, it wasn't probably 2 or 3 years after that settled down where I knew that I wanted to do it again, because there was more good times even in the failed relationship than were worth the pain of the pieces I went through in the past. So at that point, I began looking for, okay, what needs am I looking for? Where am I going to find them? And then once I found them, well, then it was a matter of getting a nerve up to go through the whole proposal piece again.
I talk to a lot of women who say that they think that you can love a man a certain amount and he'll change, or if I give him enough good loving, he'll change. But that's not the case. He has to be ready. Would you guys agree?
Right.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny that you say that because my statement was going to be, first and foremost, regardless of the signs, you have to want it. And if you don't want it, your lifestyle and your desires won't line up to being a husband. I think for me, the signs, as we've mentioned, is just when you look at other aspects of your life and you realize that this world or the dating scene and dating different women just doesn't support other aspects of your life. I'm 39, I don't have any children. I desire to be a dad. So when I look at those things and then my career, it just doesn't support being single out here. It just really doesn't support the ideal of other aspects of my life.
I knew that I wanted to marry the person that I married before I actually knew I was ready to get married. So it came down, as you know, I was working for a company and they relocated me to New Jersey. I was chasing the corporate ladder, trying to get the things so I could provide that situation financially for when my family when I'd be ready for a family. And I just got to New Jersey and I just was miserable. I just didn't like it. Just everything about it. I didn't like the way the situation for my job played out. I wasn't forced to move, but I was highly encouraged to move to New Jersey. So after a few months of living there, I had just met my wife at the time, and we were still dating, keeping in contact, even though she was still in Atlanta. And then one day I was just like, you know what? I'm done with this job. I'm gonna come back to Atlanta. No backup plan, nothing. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna support you. I'm gonna help you get on your feet. I think we haven't been together like a year. Like, man, she really cares about me. I really care about her, and she's willing to take that risk as I take that risk with me. So I knew I wanted to marry her. But then I knew when I wanted to get married was when I was financially capable of being able to provide all the things that compass with marriage. Because I did a lot of reading, and they say the number one of the top failures of a marriage is the finances. Whether you want to admit it or not, a lot of times people don't want to admit their financial situation, whether it's the debt, so things of that nature. So, my wife works in banking. So there's no faking any financials with her. She and that's a whole nother subject for another episode. But so that was the steps where I knew I wanted to marry her, and then I had to go get in a position to become married.
Now let's talk about the finance portion, because I think everybody kind of nodded their head when he mentioned being ready from a financial standpoint to be married. How important is that? Because again, when you're merging with a different person, you're assuming that they're telling you the truth about what debt they have or may not have, or how much they make. And, how do you have those tough discussions that let you know that, okay, we might be able to join together and make this thing work?
One thing I'll say is that there's no recipe. Everybody's situation is vastly different. I think one of the key components is understanding where you both are, sitting down and coming up with a plan to where you want to go. Because it's not about having a six-figure salary. It's not about, one person being such a breadwinner and another person staying home.
Not how much you make, how much you can keep.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a cookie cutter thing, but it's about, like you said, being honest, sitting down, acknowledging where you are, what needs to happen next, and next, and next. And building that plan together so that when you start your relationship, you have a solid foundation.
But I think it's also imperative to observe how people manage money, because not to say that that's a deal breaker if they manage it poorly, but it just helps you with the plan that you mentioned.
We've all talked about the plan, the sitting down, but it all gets back to two of the things which actually relate back to the first question, when when it's time, is if you don't have the honest, trustworthy conversation where you're both sitting down and giving the facts of this is my situation, I think you can work through most of them if you know where you are, like you've already said. If you know where you are and you both agree on where you're going and you work out a plan to get there. I'm a big planner, so yeah. I'll break down 14 steps to get there, which my wife doesn't necessarily like my 14 steps, but that's a whole nother story. But then you work that plan. Right. And as long as you're both working that plan, I think it does a couple of things. One, it gives you something to work on together. Mm-hmm. If you're not working on something together, you will find something to work on at each other, in my opinion. And so you can keep that out in front of you, and you can both look toward it. It's like religion and the things that bring a family together, is that there's something beyond you, a plan, religion, some future benefits, whether it be from having babies or having a family to making the next house or whatever. But you put it out there, a vacation, you put it out there. And when you can both work on it together, I think it eliminates a lot of the strife. Now, I think there's two things in there that break them up. Because I'm old, I'm 50. But it's sexual things and financial things. And I think with both of them, you work out a plan and you say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Now, you probably can't do it so much on the physical side, but on the financial side, I think it gives you something to strive for, and it develops a relationship instead of tears it up.
Even though we're putting out the financial is important, it's still not easy. You know, I still remember the first day when she suggested that we get shared bank accounts. I almost had a heart attack. You know, I mean, literally, because I was just like.
Now, one of the goals here, and while we're doing this, especially as young African-American professional men, is that we want to highlight these real issues that we have. And it's not always, and you guys are using some great terms, that, you know, there are fears. As men, when you walk into a relationship with a woman, it's not, we don't have these macho attitudes and think that everything is going to be ice cream and cake every day. And I'm glad that you guys are saying this, because we're highlighting some real integral stuff here. And so let's talk about maybe what are some of your fears as men walking into a relationship with a person that's from a total different background as you, and your goal was to still make it successful at the end of the day. I mean, for me, one of the biggest fears was transitioning from my past. Was that a fear for you of not letting your past kind of leak into what you were trying to transition into, whether it be letting go of, you know, if you were dating several people before you settled down, whether it be your friends not understanding that you're transitioning into a different phase in life, and certain friends that you may have been able to hang with, you might not be able to hang with them as tough anymore because it doesn't align with where you're going in your new relationship. So let's talk about that.
Okay, I'll start off by saying that, you know, who we are in this second, in this space and time, is nothing more than a sum of all of our past experiences. So all of those past experiences are what make you who you are, you know. So when you meet someone, everything that you've ever experienced is going to be a part of that new relationship, whether it's good or bad.
Is it important to share your past with your mate? Is that important that they know?
To a certain extent, because everything shouldn't be shared. As far as, I'm not the type of guy that wants to know all of your sexual history with this guy, that guy. I don't want to know your count, your number count, and all that kind of stuff.
But some guys do.
Some guys do. And again, there's no recipe to any relationship. There's no recipe. You know what I mean? Every people, different things float people's boat. You know what I mean?
You know, me personally, I was afraid of failing more than anything else. So when you're afraid of not doing right, failing the relationship, you put so many different guards up, boundaries, because you're trying to do the perfect thing. But like you say, there's not really any perfect recipe. What works for you might not work for me. What works for you may not work for you. So once I got over that stage of saying, hey, you know what? Can't worry about failing. You got to take a risk. I got a lot more comfortable with the idea of this marriage thing working out. So that was my biggest fear.
Now, I say fear because, and the reason why I'm harping on this is because I think that fear is a good thing. I think that as a married man, you should have a fear of messing up what you have with your relationship. And I feel like when men cheat or when women cheat, they have already assessed the risk. They have already said, well, even if I do get caught, I'm not fearful of losing that person. But if you have a fear of messing up what you've built with someone, I think that helps you stay somewhat on that straight and narrow. Would you agree?
You can say, oh, I love her, but yet I'm still doing my thing on the side. Yes, you love her, but you don't love her enough. Because if you loved her enough, that other thing that you're doing would cease to exist.
Now, that brings up another topic. I'm a firm believer that love isn't enough in a relationship. You have to have more in that pot that consists of your relationship than just love. I mean, love is great, and you have to. To me, that's an action term. You show me that you love me, but I think you need more than love. I think you got to have that respect in there. I think you got to have a few other ingredients in that bowl of gumbo other than just love.
And I think what I would refer to that to, or relate that to, is if you treat love like a feeling, which changes daily. If those of us are married, it can change in the next 5 minutes, okay? Seconds. But if it's just a feeling, if the the angels came by, she walked in the room, I feel, that can change. But love is not necessarily a feeling. Does I think it have something to do with it? Absolutely, I get it.
Right.
But I'm gonna get spiritual here. It nowhere in this definition of what love is does it talk about the angel singing when she walks in the room. It talks about the commitment pieces, suffering, kind, patient, all of these things
Right.
that you
Talk
pour
about it.
into
Talk
that
about
gumbo
it.
that make it work. So when I don't like you, you got on my last nerve. The game's on, and you still want me to take the trash out. The trash will be there when the fourth quarter's done. I don't like you, but I love you. Now, it still might not affect if I take the trash out at that second, but it didn't change what I'm going through and how, I hate to say, I go back to feeling what I think of you. That's probably the best way to when I'm relating to my wife. What I think of you, it didn't change because it's all of these other things. I don't feel like it right now, I'll admit it, but it didn't change all of those other things that are in the gumbo. All the other ingredients are still there, and they have to remain there. And when they are there, it works.
I think there's a lot of work involved now also with being infatuated and being in love with a person. You also have to understand that you're not going to get along all the time. It's not the end of the world just because she yelled at me or because I yelled at her for whatever reason for not taking the trash out. You know, we'll get over it. Just don't make it. And if there's things that you feel like you can't handle, just talk it out.
Right. Now, you said something key, too, about marriage is work. Now, I've talked to so many couples and people who've been married and just people in general who seek marriage that talk to other people who are married. And that's one of the first things they say. They say, marriage is work. And then most people say, marriage is such hard work. I don't believe that. We can get into that, but I don't believe that marriage is hard work. I've been married for some years now, and I've never felt like it was tough, that it's tough being married. Now, I understand you have to put in some work, stay consistent, and there's certain things as a man you have to do from that standpoint, but I would never refer to being married to my wife as hard work. I feel like if it's hard work, it's a problem. I went through hard work already. I worked hard on my job. I worked hard in school. I don't want to have to come home and work hard to stay together with you. You know?
With the work thing, I think a part of it is also, and I give this responsibility to the men in the relationship, and that's that you have to manage your relationship. You know, proper planning promotes a positive performance, and with that proper
Say that again. Say that again.
Proper planning promotes a positive performance, and as the man, when you're managing your relationship, you have to be in tune, because what's the number one thing that builds a team's morale? That's winning, accomplishing, being successful together. That's how you build that camaraderie. And as you set these goals and these plans and you accomplish them together, and you can look at your mate and say, we did this together. That's how you continue to build, and you're growing closer as a unit.
If you want to be good at anything, you have to work at it. So if I would be thrilled to be working as an MBA professional, I'm going to be just as happy working to be a married professional. So I'm going to put my work in.
Absolutely.
I don't just love my wife, I'm passionate about my wife. And when you have passion for something, you enjoy doing it. And like you say, it's work, but however you enjoy doing that work.
That's an investment.
And speaking of investment, you know, people in general, any relationship, whether it's a spouse or just a friend, people are like a bank account. You have to make deposits into that bank account before you make withdrawals. And especially with a woman, even more so, because they're more emotional beings than we are, we have to always be cognizant that we're making deposits into that bank account before we overdraft by coming in and saying something off the wall when we haven't loved on her enough and made those deposits. That makes sense? Because there's plenty of men making withdrawals and overdrafting their woman.
And not replenishing.
You know what I mean?
You men out there watching, as you can see, to sum this up, that the greater responsibility falls on us. And if you're not ready or capable to understand that as a man, fair or unfair, the greater responsibility falls on us. This conversation is heating up. We're going to take a break and be right back. You're tuned in to The Everyday Man. Welcome back. Before we left, the conversation was heating up quite a bit. Well, it's going to get a little hotter. We're going to transition into another topic that I think will be great for our viewers out there to hear and understand from the male perspective. And fellas, make sure that you prepare yourself for where we're about to go. But people like to think that just because you get married or you're in a serious relationship that your options reduce. I tend to believe, and I've experienced it somewhat, that your options actually increase when you get married, because the ring is almost like a championship ring. Women see that, and in their mind, they're like, somebody wanted to marry him. Somebody wanted to marry him. It's something about him. I gotta see what is it about this guy where somebody wanted to spend the rest of their life with them. So talk about, how do you guys handle temptation when you're married or in a committed relationship?
I would like to think that for the most part, most women who see that you have a ring on will be respectful of your situation.
But we know that's not the case.
Why should they be respectful? I'm playing devil's advocate. Why should they be respectful to your situation?
Because why shouldn't they?
She has an agenda.
Yes, because I'm a strong believer.
Optimistic.
Because some women honestly believe, man, that that's what they're looking for. They don't want. They want, because they know that you won't have any strings with them. They know that you can't take up too much of their time because you got this other situation at home. They know that there's only going to be a certain amount of requirements that you might have because you're doing something you shouldn't be doing anyway. Not saying you, but as a married man, it's women who prey on that. It's women who prey on those situations. Even though we're married men, we're still men. Yeah. Even though you're married, you still might find somebody attractive. There's always going to be something you look at, something you see. And in some of those cases, you might get approached by someone, and it happens because we see it every day. A married person just doesn't step out because they just went out and said, I'm going to mess with this person or that person. Maybe they were approached by that person. That's what we're addressing here, is that, there are men who are married who are making it bad for us. They say, because that's the stigma. That's why we're doing this, to highlight the fact that there are men who say, regardless of the temptation, I know how to handle myself. Regardless of what this attractive woman may come to me and look like or say, I know how to address that situation accordingly so that it doesn't become a problem in my home. But we have men who aren't doing that. So, but they're more highlighted. We're the quiet voice in the room. They're not showing us. They're showing all the folks that aren't doing the right thing. So let's address and talk about, what do you do in those instances? So if Halle Berry walked past you right now and said,
okay, let's not bring up Halle now. Me and my wife talked about that one. That was sacred over there. I get a pass on that one. She and LL Cool J, same thing. I was like, all right, I'll give you your pass. But I've been saying this since I was 20, and that's back before light bulbs. But the whole thing was, okay, for those 10 seconds in your head, do it in your head. Okay, now what? Right. There's an agenda. Could be an agenda. Do you want to talk to her? I mean, really, you don't even know her that well. This ain't no long-standing relationship thing. This is somebody came up. Now what? What do you know about this lady? Nothing. So you're going to sacrifice all the time and work that you put in to this lady that's at the house, that's there for you, that's got your back, that's willing to do all the things that we've already talked about, for 15 minutes. Okay, y'all, man, make it 30.
20. I got at least 20.
5. You never know. She might be that cute.
So now that's a part of your spirit. That's a part of your spirit and in your conscience, knowing that you've done that. And you have to deal with that internally.
Hey, listen, we saying this because we're sitting at the table with some lemonade and some peanuts, and we all G'd up smelling like cool water cologne. The reality of it is that the people, men and women, but since we're talking about men, when you're in that moment, you're not having that conversation in your mind. You're not thinking about, my wife is at home making me a peach cobbler from scratch and macaroni and cheese from the Patti LaBelle book of goodness.
But why are
you
we
ain't
in that
thinking
situation?
that. What you mean, why?
But why? How
you don't
are
even
you
have
in
to
the
put
room?
yourself in that situation, Doc. I used to work in corporate America.
Okay.
And you can just be going to get you a Snapple from the refrigerator.
Yes.
And
Talk
it'll be
about
something. It'll be the littlest thing, man. You know, the biggest. I heard in the movie, the biggest trick that the devil tried to play on the world is making you think that he don't exist. He exists, Jack, and sometimes he gonna be in a red dress or blue. Mm-hmm. So you have to be prepared for that. How do you prepare? How are you prepared? It's each individual man. Sometimes you may just have to just make yourself look foolish and just leave in mid-conversation, Jack. If you know you like legs, when you see them legs coming down the hallway, dude, dip into an office.
And that's what I was getting at, is that don't put yourself in those situations to where you know that you could be vulnerable.
But you're not. That's my point. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes it just approaches you.
Right.
But then didn't a vulnerable situation just walk up? Now, one of the things, and this we talk about this, it's like alcohol. One of the things that I realize now is I don't ever want to be out of control of myself, ever. So there's a point in having a good time out, you know, where, okay, I'm crossing that line where things ain't looking like they used to, you know. So even when situations come up, I take a step back. And that's where I get that thought that says, in this case, now what?
But you have to be able to identify that moment. Because sometimes when you don't identify it, you're too late. You already in the deep end.
But here's what I think about that. I came in this place with my pants on. Before they get off, I had time to think about it. Mm-hmm. And that's where, no. This ain't happening.
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. I think people in general assess the risks before they do whatever it is that they're going to do. Because temptation is real. And just because you get married or just because you decide to settle down, it's not going anywhere. You know, it's still going to be there. You know, like I said, again, we're married men, but we're still men. You know, your senses and your certain things are going to pick up, and you have to be willing, like you said, to acknowledge that and know how am I going to address it before you even see the situation. You have to have and be equipped a certain way to say, if I'm presented with this, what would I do? But if you're not thinking about that, you're going to be in a situation just like Lemuel said, where you're going to be blindsided, and next thing you know, you have acted on that temptation because you didn't prepare yourself mentally for these things that are going to happen. Because a lot of people think that just because I'm married now, other things aren't going to happen. I'm just going to be able to hide in my little safe haven with my wife or whatever. And that's unrealistic because we see it every day.
I would say that, just going to your temptation, you can't be naive and think that you're not going to see somebody that your wife's not going to see anybody that may be more attractive than them. You know, you got your people, you say you have passes, I got people. I'm in public and I look at, but sometimes my wife's with me. She's like, I can tell you just looked at, I can tell her. But she knows, she's like, she'll be like, hey, she's an attractive person. Yeah. But you just it comes down to being disciplined, like he's saying. So, you got to be prepared for the situation, but you just got to be disciplined because you do have a lot to lose. And, the stronger, and a lot of times the more vulnerability comes when you're at a weaker point in your marriage. Mm-hmm. So you can allow those things to come in because you're already, like he says, got those things in your mind. Like, everything, is this really the right person I'm with? Wow, look at this lady who just came to the Snapple machine. You just winked at me, I think, So now you're already not confident, like you say, those different things. So, but to pretend like you're not going to see someone as attractive and you're not going to see those temptations, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because like I say, I'm out and I see a lot of people and I'm with other married men and we're like, whoa, we don't go act on it, but we say, whoa, I didn't know this was in the grocery store, things of that nature.
They got new Snapple.
We are in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And what do they say? The ratio of men to women is like 20-1 here.
And that's why I stay in Chicago. Our counselor recommend that when you get to those moments where you feel like you're being tempted, to share with your mate. What you think about that? Because what it does is it makes you accountable. And then maybe it also brings up a topic that maybe is something that's lacking. Now, it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of maturity, as you mentioned earlier. And it takes really good communication. I've never done that, but I can honestly see how it could work. because
or go
but
downhill.
you think it'll go downhill?
It's all about the maturity level of the woman. Because some women can handle that, some women can't.
Right, and you have to know your woman.
Because mentally, you basically just told them you cheated. Some women will take that as this man.
I agree.
cheating.
I agree 100%.
If a past experience is taking them to
Insecurity.
that insecurities, but you'd have to measure one at a time.
I would say I haven't gotten to the point of where it's where you say that you're close to crossing the line.
Right.
But there have been situations where, you know, maybe someone you might have connected with or someone from the past is connected with you through a social media or, you know, I've had the same phone number for like 20 years, so maybe they've sent me a text message and I will share that with her. Like, hey, look, you know, we'll laugh about it. Like, look at this person here now, just to let her know that this is going on out there. Because I would rather know that it's there than her to, and she's not that type of person, but for somehow randomly come across this and then get the wrong idea that, wait a minute, why does she think it's okay for her to even communicate to you like this? As opposed, is it really random or is it not random? So when I do have those situations, I try to share them with them, but I haven't had that situation where the lady, I'm not even gonna say Snapple anymore because they're not gonna give us no money. The lady at the vending machine tempted me. So I think it's tough though because like I said, but you gotta be strong about it. And sometimes, you know, it goes back to the work thing. You know, everything that I share with my wife, she may not like, she may not agree with it, but sometimes it's still what's best for our relationship. Just because it's not what you want to hear and it's the truth, get it out there. Let's put it on the table. You can yell at me, and then let's talk about it and let's find the right solution so we can continue to make sure our situation does not corrupt because of some outside forces.
Now, you brought up an excellent point that I kind of want to also transition into social media. To me, social media today is also a form of temptation. Oh, yeah. The way that people are using social media today, I mean, it leaves the door for so many problems. I say
Facebook is Match.com, eHarmony.
People are now. That's
Everybody
all they're
hooking up.
doing. That's all they're doing is using social media as a way to hook up. All this Women Crush Wednesday, Man Crush Monday. All you're doing is basically telling somebody, I'm checking you out, and I want to know, are you checking me out too?
Just liking a picture.
Yeah. So talk about the effects of social media on relationships today. I think that's a huge
I gotta relate that to younger people because they don't have this on ESPN. If y'all were watching ESPN all the time, you wouldn't have these problems.
Well, my wife and I, we're not on social media.
And why is that? Let's talk about why is that?
Prior to us getting married, we were married in August 31st of 2013. And in June of 2013, as we were doing our premarital counseling and things of that nature, we talked about a lot of different things. And social media was one of the things that came up. And I'm the type of guy, I like to be proactive. If there's something that could potentially be an issue, I want to address it now before it even becomes something.
Yeah.
And in June of 2013, you know, as much as I love to post pictures and let people know what I'm doing, I talked to my wife and we made a conscious decision to get off of all social media due to, you know, different things that could come about. You know, because when you weigh the pros and the cons, the possible cons definitely outweigh the pros that we get out of social media. Because again, at the end of the day, the people that we love and we really talk to, we can send them pictures and things through text message and email. You know what I mean? Right. I don't need to be able to still talk to people from high school and all these different things. People that you don't really talk to anyway. You know, it's just people just want to be in your business and know what you're doing.
Right. I will say, you know, I've had that same conversation. But for me, we decided not to get rid of it because I get more out of social media than just posting pics. Like you said, I get a lot of news information that I don't have access to. Like I'm probably bigger on Twitter than Facebook. Facebook's probably more of a networking for close friends and family. But I get a lot of information that I don't have access to outside of social media because I'm into world events. I can't get the exact world events I want to see on MSNBC or CNN or even ESPN. Sometimes they have a shaded opinion. So I get a lot of stuff. So the pros still for me that I still get so much valuable information out of social media because I kind of try to use it the right way, especially like LinkedIn and stuff like that, that the cons or the distraction haven't reached that point. But I do agree to you, if it reached that point where the negativity outweighs the positive information I'm getting, then I'm going to, because I get a lot of information fed to me as opposed to having to go get it myself. And that's what I really, and I think that's what social media was originally intentionally used for, and then it turned into the easy dating
Because
site.
then one final point is that, remember how we talked earlier about our past. Our social media, it holds on to that past, even though you're trying to create a new future. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. I think, again, it comes down to your intention. Like, I'm all over social media for many different reasons. But you do have to have that conversation, that especially if it's going to affect your household, your relationship. You have to have a certain intention when you go into using these things, because it's the way of the world now. Social media ain't going nowhere. And you're missing out on a lot if you're not a part of social media. I'll be willing to say almost to what you're saying. There's so much information that you could be privy to. Nowadays, depending upon what your career path may be, or if you're into entertainment, now everybody is accessible. You can reach out and touch damn near anybody, that you couldn't in the past. I've had conversations with celebrities that would have never conversed with me via Twitter because it exists now. And if you say an interesting thing, or you are coming, and I like to address things in a positive light, if you spark up conversations to these people, you might get a response. And now that's a relationship that you have that you wouldn't have. So again, I think it comes down to intention. Now, for me personally, everything that I post, everything that I put on, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, is calculated. I think before I post this, because once you put it on the internet, it's accessible to anybody. And some people are naive to the fact that just because you've got a private setting on your stuff, that don't mean somebody can't get to it. So you have to be cognizant of what you put out there. And then also to address the potential of your past and people from your past trying to creep into what your current situation is. Everything I post is either related to me and my wife, or me and my kids, or me and my friend. Well, I think we have all agreed that social media is a choice. You have to be careful with what you choose to put out there. Reggie brings up a great analogy of being on it, and now for the health of his relationship, he has decided that they have decided, rather, not to use it. So again, at the end of the day, it all comes down to what works best for your relationship. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back. You're still watching The Everyday Man. Welcome back to The Everyday Man. We are about to turn it up a little more here. We are going to pose a question, or I'm going to pose a question to the fellas that they may or may not agree with, but that's the point of this. We're trying to incite some healthy debate here and conversation as we take relationships to the next level. So fellas, I'm going to pose a question to you guys, and you tell me what you think. Now, I've read a ton of books and listened to a lot of relationship experts, and a lot of people believe that communication is the most important aspect in a relationship. I'm of the mindset that although it is very important, it is not the most important factor. And the reason why I say that is most of the time when you're communicating with a person, you're not even listening to what they're saying. Especially, think about what we talked about earlier, when you're arguing with your mate. What are you doing when your mate is coming at you with something? Human nature, you're on the defense. You might be hearing her, but you're not listening, because what you're doing is waiting for your response that you're going to come back with once she's done saying whatever it is that she might be upset about. I'm of the mindset that you can be great at expressing yourself and telling someone how you feel, but you can't put that above the other things. You can't put that above spending time. You can't put that above the affection, because let's say you're great at communicating, but you're not affectionate with your mate. Your relationship still could be in trouble. Let's say you're great at expressing your feelings, but you're not putting that time in. Well, guess what? Your relationship still could be in trouble. So in today's dating arena, in 2014, I'm of the mindset that you have to be able to almost be able to put everything on a level playing field. So although I'm not saying that communication isn't important, because it is, I'm just saying you can't focus on that one thing and think that you're going to be successful. I think nowadays you have to learn how to put everything on a level playing field, from communication to the intimacy to the spending time. Just everything has to be on a level playing field. So tell me what you guys think about that.
if one person's not listening, then you're really not communicating. You're just rambling. You're just going on. Effective communication is being able to speak and listen to what you're saying. So in theory, I get what you're saying, but I think we're kind of straying away from the definition of communication. And I don't think you can do any of those things. Everything's important in the piece, but I think you can't do anything successfully if you do not communicate what your intentions or what your needs are for the specific situation.
You know, what I think happens a lot of times is that we have a way of doing things, whether it's learned behavior or whether it's as a result of, and I guess this is part of learned behavior, but through previous relationships. And what happens is when you get into another one, you're so set in doing it this way. You have to be open enough, especially considering the person that you're with may not be the person that you were before. You may not have to communicate the same way, you know? So you just have to be open, man. I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier, there's no cookie cutter way of approaching this.
Most people will say that they heard what you said, but that's clearly not the case. Most people, when you're communicating with someone, and we're just using the argument per se, not that, you know, every relationship argues, which, you know, some people would say that you do, but by human nature, if somebody's attacking you, you're gonna jump to the defense. You're on the defense, whether you mean to be or not. So that's what I'm saying. Again, I want to preface this by saying I'm not saying that communication isn't important. It is extremely important. I'm just saying that you can't today in today's where we see the divorce rate being what it is, when we see everyone breaking up. You can't just say that these folks they didn't have great communication. That can't be the reason. You know, if everybody's saying that they know communication is the most important thing, why isn't it working then? If everybody knows that, then why isn't it working?
Okay, but let's get back to communication and the result of that communication. I think a lot of the things that you're talking about are in result of something else. So if they are effectively communicating, like you said, that means I am spending as much time listening and hearing not only the words that come out, but the emotion and the why on the emotion. And to downplay a lot of the arguing and stuff like that, one of the things I learned in counseling was about how to argue. And it becomes very difficult when I don't say you. Now you said being on the defensive. Yes, I'm going to be on the defensive. If I go, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. But if I voice that or phrase that, I feel this way when this doesn't happen.
Right.
So I feel neglected when the trash stays in.
The masses aren't doing that.
And the masses are part of what we just talked about.
Right. I get both points of what you guys are both saying. So you do that. You've adopted the techniques. Both are great at effective communication. You feel like you're on the same page with your mate. Everything's good to go. You're saying all the right things, and then you walk out of that conversation, or that conversation is over, and your actions don't align with everything you just effectively communicated. So again, I could say it all, I could communicate it all, I can, put it all together to where we both understand what we need and this and that. But if I then don't take my actions and align with what we just communicated, you still can't tell me that communication is the best,
I'll say this. Communication is the ocean, and everything else is a river that streams from that ocean of communication. Now, again, going back to what you both said, effective communication. This is where communication gets complex, because communication is me conveying a message to a receiver, and that person receiving that message and decoding it. Now, the decoding part is where it gets complex, because I could have a conversation with you and have a conversation with you, but you could take something totally different from the conversation than what he got. And when you talk about the method of communication and how it gets complex, when you're in an argument or whatever the situation may be, all of those surrounding things have to do with how the message is decoded, because your body language is saying one thing, the tone of your voice is saying one thing. So once you get into that complex gray area, that's where a lot of people aren't doing it effectively.
Right. And let me add, and I think one thing you're kind of confusing is you're saying that the masses aren't communicating properly, so therefore it's not the most important thing. No, the reason why these divorce rates and things are going up high is because they are not communicating properly and they don't know how to communicate. Like you say, you take it back to your intimacy thing. You can't tell me that you and your partner are just getting it on perfectly just off chemistry. You know, whether she gave you that look or something that, hey, this isn't right, or she verbally telling you that this isn't right, or you're verbally telling her, hey, no, I don't like this. No, don't put your hands there. No, that's off limits, things of that nature. You're communicating.
What's off limits when you marry?
Whatever it is. Well, that's a separate topic. I can tell you something. I can tell you what's off limits for me, but it may not be off limits for you.
But we're still staying in one lane. I'm just saying, what about, again, we talked about the intimacy factor. Again, you might have someone who they might feel as though they're less than, or their relationship is in trouble because, my husband ain't never brought me nothing. My husband ain't never came home and surprised me with you might not have, she might not have ever communicated that to each other, but when it happens, you like it. But you don't find out that you like this random or spontaneous stuff unless it's being done. So again, I'm just saying I agree with everybody's point around the table. I'm going to make that evident. I agree with what everybody is saying. I'm just saying in today, I just want to stress that I don't think that you can say, if I'm a great communicator and our communication is great, then I can ignore some of this other stuff that has to also be on that playing field.
Just because communication is not good in a relationship and it fails doesn't mean it's not important. Just means that people weren't.
And again, I'm not saying that it's not important. I'm just saying that it can't be the only invite to the party.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But you said that it's not the most important. So I'm waiting for you to tell me what's more important than communication.
I'm telling you, it's the actions behind that communication is the most important to me. Because you can communicate to me, I can understand you. We could be on the same page, but if you walk out of that conversation or you leave that conversation and you're still the same person you were and your actions don't align with everything that you and I agreed that we were on the same page about, all that communication meant nothing.
Well, that kind of goes to what my man right here was saying. It's you have to know what that looks like for your mate, whether it's the verbiage or whether it's the actions or a combination of both. Because to me, you can't tell me, for me, in my love language, which is acts of service, you can't tell me that's one of the four. Acts of service. I read the book. But you can't, for a Lemuel, you can't as a woman tell me that you love me, and I receive it from your words, but if you never operate in my act of my love language, which is acts of service, if you never operate in that, it's not that I'm going to question whether or not you love me, but the effects of it. Of you communicating that.
Well, how does the saying go? I want you to, your actions should speak so loud that I could barely hear you. I think that your actions, you see what I'm saying? Your actions should speak so loud that I can't hear what you're saying. To me, a person's actions mean more than anything that could ever come out of their mouth. That's all I'm saying.
But keep this in mind, Johnny. Keep this in mind. And I'm gonna veer off a little bit and I'm gonna come right back. To your point talking about actions, again, I think you need to be able to identify your mate and what makes her tick. Operating in her love language, right? Okay, so with that being said, when you're talking about today's, that's how you started off the conversation, talking about today's relationships. When you look at the average woman today, most of them are doing everything themselves anyway. And not to say that she doesn't want to receive that from her man, but you just need to be clear to make sure your actions towards her to show her love or to communicate that isn't in vain. You need to be able to say, my woman does that by herself. And I know it's nothing more disheartening than to do something for a woman and it feels like it's not appreciated. And it's not that it's not appreciated. She's just used to doing everything by herself because she's been single for so long and she's not used to somebody taking some of them bricks off her back.
A lot of what is going on, that people are saying all the right stuff because I'm glad that you said this to me. I'm glad that you're making me feel good. But then you go out these doors and you do something totally different.
Well, sometimes if the love language is that piece, affirmation, sometimes that's all it takes to make her feel better. Sometimes I can bring all the flowers in the world in this house, give you back massages and rub your feet every night before you go to sleep. But if I don't tell you something, it didn't mean nothing. So I think all of it, we talked about earlier about the financial plan. We got straight on finances, and the first thing we talked about was coming together with a plan and then working that plan.
Right.
Let's do that with other things. Let's communicate what makes us feel right. Let's communicate what the situation is, and let's work a plan in it. And then let's act on that plan. So my action might be, I need to bring you flowers more often. I need to be more affectionate. I need to, in my case, take some of the logic out of my conversation and insert emotion.
Here's a idea. In all of this, I think it's imperative that every man takes time to understand his woman. That's the undertone I hear.
Yes.
Because you have to, in order for it to work, whether it's verbal or nonverbal communication, you have to take time to understand your woman. And please understand that these things can change. You know, God help you if you think your woman is going to stay the same. You know, especially in regards to her emotions. And I say that with the utmost respect to women. I was raised by two.
And as a man, I would also agree that you have to also be observant of your relationship. You can't just be in a relationship with a person and not be paying attention to everything that's going on, because what you said, things are going to change. She's not going to be the same person this year, next year. You're not going to be the same person, and stuff might happen that you don't even realize is happening until it happens. So again, I mean, we've got different perspectives on all this, and that's great. I mean, that's why we're doing this, to bring some healthy debate and conversation. But I'm just saying, communication is extremely important. But again, you have to do some of those other things just as well. And again, we could stay on this like Reggie said for the entire episode. But I just wanted to kind of give a different turn of the table, because if it was that simple, the state of relationships today, and I'm not saying it is simple, maybe I'm using the wrong word, the state of relationships today wouldn't be as bad as they are. So again, we can table this and we'll pick it up later, but we'll take a quick break. You're tuned in to The Everyday Man. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are going to take another turn here, because we do have a single man in the room amongst us married men. And one of the purposes of this show is to highlight and help those to kind of understand the relationship dynamic and identifying really what is a good mate these days. So I want to know, or we want to know, what do men really look for in a woman, especially in today's dating arena? What would you say are some things that men really look for nowadays?
I think it varies, first and foremost, for that particular man. But for me and a lot of men in my circle, one of the things that I think is high up there is just loyalty. I think when you are a man and you are doing manly things in this world, whether it's socially, economically, for your career, et cetera, spiritually, you need to know that this particular aspect of your world is okay. And I think the part that drives that is loyalty, because encompassed in the ideal of loyalty is that person making the best interest or having me in her best interest. So I think a man just looks for somebody that, today looks for somebody that's a partner, man, a good teammate. I mean, a lot of us are sports minded. So, when you're talking about, somebody that you're partnered up with, somebody that has your back, whether it's up or down, somebody that's going to support you. We just got through talking about like how to communicate. For me, what's huge for me is knowing how I am, knowing that at certain times of the day or whatever disposition I have from my job, to just step back and leave me alone. And I know that may sound a little harsh, but everybody needs that time where they can just unwind or clear their mind. So I think it's a variety of things, and I mean, we could be here all day, but I know for me, it's loyalty and respecting who I am and who I'm not. Are
there some things that kind of are universal for men to say that we would like to have this in a woman that we date? And anybody can chime in on certain things that you think are important.
Well, number one for me, I have to be attracted to you. But before I even say one word, that's going to be the first thing that lures me in. So number one, this has to be attraction, because if I'm attracted to you, I'm going to come and converse with you. And as we have our conversation and we start to build, character is very important. As you spend time with the person and you see how they make decisions, their character traits, transparency is very important for me, and the list could go on, but overall, I would say for the first and foremost is you have to appeal to the eye, and then from there it's all about the character and how we can build.
Now that's honest too, because I think a lot of times we downplay how important the physical attraction is in the beginning. I know, Mike, you brought up an awesome point earlier in the show about how we understand that down the road those looks may change, but in order to open the door, you got to catch that attention. You know, you have to have a certain...
Because none of us buy a car because of the paint job. But however, the reason why we were interested in the car was the paint job. That makes sense?
Right, and I piggyback that off to say...
I'm full of them.
I piggyback off that to say that confidence, and I think that women look for that in us too as men. I think for me, if a woman can exude a certain level of confidence, that does something for me. You know, that she, the way that she carries herself, and that today I think that is lost. I mean, some of the women today they feel like they got to show everything to get someone's attention. But I think the classy lady that can walk in the room and don't have to have all her stuff hanging out, they can still grab your attention.
I think that's the number one thing that all men, I think we can agree upon, is that how a woman carries herself is one of the main things we look at when we say she's wifey material.
Yes.
Right. And I think back to eye catching. You can catch my eye because I want it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. Yes. And so if you catch my eye for the wrong reasons, well, I've already put you, I'm not going to say in a category because you can't earn your way out of there, but I put you in a pot.
Right.
And now you have to convince me otherwise. Right. So if you're walking around with everything showing, you caught my eye. Right. I'm male. You caught my eye, wind blows, and it's there.
I'm a man first.
But now, do you want to take her to the foxhole or do you want to take her to the den?
Right. Yeah. That's where we start talking about some of those other things, you know.
The difference between the good time girl and the girl.
I'm trying to figure out which one's good and which one's bad.
The den is taking her home to mom. The foxhole is taking her, for a rendezvous.
The 4-hour spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that's it. So you start looking at other traits, character things.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, especially as I have matured, those are the things that really mean the most. Got to catch my eye.
Yeah.
You know, but after that, it's all about character, honesty, loyalty. You know, the things that are much harder to discern at initial meeting point, or you know, across the room, or whatever it might be. Those are things you learn over time. You start looking at how she reacts to different situations, not as tests, not as games, because I don't do those. Maybe I just outgrew them. But, you know, we're talking about a situation, and what goes on in your head? What do you think about that? And how does the answer come out? Are you, I look for confidence, but I look for the right kind of confidence. The confidence that says, we were having a conversation about, my wife brings me dinner, for the most part. Every now and then she, gets mad at me. But she brings my dinner. Now, is she confident that she is still the queen of my life because she bought me my plate? Or does she feel like she's being a servant?
Right.
It takes a woman that can sit there and listen to my banter sometimes as I'm trying to make a decision, or in the way I make a decision, and still allow me to be leader of the house. Right. Those are the things I'm looking for when I'm looking for a wife, and I found it.
Yeah, because a lot of women want to be married, but they don't understand the role of a wife.
One of the things that I really think stands out that gets lost is how respectful a person is. And when I say respectful, people can fake respect. they can be as polite as a person to people, to me, or to people who they're close with. And I've still, you've probably heard me say this before. I look at how people treat people who have no ties to them. A big thing is you see the way you go into a way, how they treat waitresses, how they treat valet people, how they treat the bartender.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be with somebody that we're going in ordering a $5 meal at McDonald's, and you're flipping out on the cashier who's making minimum wage because you didn't get the perfect burger. But that's what you signed up for when you went to McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You didn't go to you're not going to Houston's for a steak or anything. You went to McDonald's. So watching how you interact with people who have no effect on your life, because people can fake it to you all the time. Oh, I'm the most respectful to your mom, but people who have no ties to you, you can learn a lot from them by how they treat random people in the I call it the service industries or whatever industry. Even if it's work, the receptionist at the desk who has no effect on your job. Seeing how you deal with those people can show a lot about the type of character that person has, because their true colors will come out when you see how they react to the bartender or the valet.
The setting of unrealistic expectations from the jump. Is it that people have unrealistic expectations when they first meet somebody today and not really taking it for either face value or putting in enough time to see if it could develop into something? Is that part of the issue?
I use the term, it's funny you say that, you say unrealistic expectations. I guess maybe me being in sales, I use manage expectations, because you may have things that you really want, but you have to understand what you're dealing with. And you got to be able to manage the things that you can control and understand but it is realistic. Understand what's realistic, even in any aspect of life. Yeah, I want the biggest house in the world because I want the backyard, I want the garden, things of that nature. But my salary and my expectation says I'm just not in a position to get that today. Now, I may get it in 5 years. I may be able to groom my situation to get it in 5 years. So you tie that into a relationship. You know what? This we're going to grow together. We can do this. I see the potential in her because she has all these character skills that I like. Now, she may not be there. That's why we're there for each other, to bring each other up, so we can manage the expectations to get to those quote-unquote unrealistic things in the future. But you got to be able to manage that, understand that.
That you used a key word that I think is awesome, potential. Mm-hmm. Do you think nowadays that, and I personally believe that people don't really want potential anymore. They want the finished product.
It depends on your age.
Yeah.
It depends on your age.
It depends
if I'm 35 and I'm looking for love, I'm not really banking on potential anymore.
Right.
But if I'm 22,
fair.
I got room for that.
You have room for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you're a situation, if I'm 35 and I have a kid and I've been through a situation and things, the dynamics change.
I put it as I'm marrying or looking for a human who's going to have ebbs and flows, imperfections, things I can groom, things I can work with. Can't change a lot of the character things that we talked about earlier. But I know that every meal is not going to be perfect.
Right.
Why am I going to put that on every moment?
And that's true love, loving the imperfections. Mm-hmm. Loving a person enough to love their imperfections. That's, to me, what true love is.
I come in with the mindset that every relationship is a risk.
Absolutely.
So every risk is a risk. So, there's going to be some things but you don't really know. People have the debate, should you move in with them before you get married, after you get married? There's things that are positive when you move in before, there's negative things. But it's still a risk if you don't choose that one side of it, whether it's your religious beliefs or you're going into something that you don't think. So I think when I say potential, I'm just thinking because there are risks that there's an unknown. When you get married, regardless if you've been together I think I was with my wife 4 or 5 years before. I shouldn't say I think. I was with my wife 4 to 5 years before we got married.
Exactly how long?
Before we got married, and even with all that time, we had lived together, and there was still some risk involved because there was things that I thought that she was extremely capable of, and she has been capable of them, but there's a chance that it didn't work out, and I was willing to deal with those consequences because, people say the 80-20 rule, things of that nature. The majority of what I found love in her for was going to be there regardless of what that potential was. Now, would I get with her if only 20% was solid and 80% was potential? Probably that's a lot of risk, man. I'm not that big of a gambling man. But if the foundation is strong and the upside makes it even stronger, I think there is a chance to enjoy some potential at any stage of a relationship because, like you said, there's not going to be any perfection. But no, I'm not coming in with somebody who's only got 5% of the plan and hoping that the other 95% cashes out.
Yeah,
Right.
but here's the thing. What you just said is very important because you got to understand that in this dating game, people aren't doing that.
Yeah, right.
They're focusing in on things that can be considered superficial and shallow,
Yeah,
and they're trying to build off that.
Right. So that's why I wanted to clear that up. Yeah.
What is he driving?
Yeah, what is he driving? His shoe size.
Yeah. But again, I think that's awesome that we're acknowledging that there's no greater risk that you can take than what you take when you're in a relationship. You say you're a gambling man. There's no greater odds in Vegas that are going to be greater than what you take in a relationship because you just don't know. But I think the cool thing about us and the cool thing about why we're sitting around this table is that we realize that the risk is worth it. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. And these rings that we wear, the hopefulness that Lemuel has to be back in this position again is a true definition of the fact that he's willing to take that risk because it can really pay off in the end when you get it right. Again, you're still watching The Everyday Man. We'll be right back. We're back. We can all see that, again, the purpose of this show is to highlight and promote happy and healthy relationships, to show that there are examples of men who are willing participants in great relationships, and we want to highlight a side that's not being illustrated today. But if we're being honest and we look out there on television and social media, we know that the state of relationships today are in bad shape. It's not good. And so what I want to know, if we can help our viewers out there, what is the problem? If each one of you can kind of say, what do you think is the problem today? Why is it that it seems people just can't stay together today anymore?
Discipline.
That was my word.
Discipline.
Expand.
Now I'm just gonna say discipline and pass it around.
like you said, it goes to discipline. It goes to back when we're saying when you fall for that temptation that we talked about earlier in the show. Like you have to be disciplined to turn that down. You got to be disciplined in understanding what your partner's expectations are. We talked about things such as being able to communicate properly and understanding how to make the actions from that communication. And I'll say for myself, there's sometimes my wife communicates certain things to me, and I'm still stubborn at them, just because. And I know this is what she wants, but I'm just being stubborn. So sometimes I have to take a step back and say, you know what, it's not about me. I got to get back on plan. But I think discipline is one of the biggest things that we let all these other outside factors come in and intrude into what's going inside our home, and we just got to stay focused.
For men, we can be our own worst enemy because we're often quick to say, but we're men, as if we can't be something better. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, yes, we are men, but that doesn't have to have a negative stigma attached to it. A man can also be mature and also be disciplined, and also be a provider, and also be a lover and a faithful man. Just because you're a man doesn't mean that you have something inside of you that says you can't be faithful because you have to chase every piece of tail that wiggles past.
Talk about it. People forget about being consistent. It's like you get in a relationship and you get in your normal way of doing things. You think everything is okay, and you forget about the little things. Yeah.
It's human, but that's one of the things. And like I said, I still remind myself of this. I said this. I will continue to say it. My job in my relationship today, is to make my wife happy today. And then first thing in the morning, I have to say that again, which means all the stuff in the past might have planted some good seeds, but I still have to water them, that one, or plant a new one every day. And that's the work part. Because if you go into, maybe I should use it as a new relationship. One of the reasons I think new relationships are so easy is because everything's new. It wasn't work. I said, you look good today. That's all I had to say. That was good.
Right.
If I say that for 365, I got to change it a little bit.
Yes.
You know, and work it up. But I still have to say,
Gotta say it. You still gotta
look
stay
good.
consistent. Just
But
fine.
now you smack her on the booty when you walk past.
I gotta change it up, and it's still something I have to do.
You got to be willing to, throughout the course of your relationship. I think today's mindset is that I'm not willing to change. You know, there's one thing for sure in this life: things are going to change, and some people are so resistant to that. And I think that is a big problem. You and I, Lemuel, have had a great conversation one time, and you told me this years ago. This analogy of, you know, let's say you work for a company. All of us are gainfully employed, and your boss comes in and says, I need you to change this, this, and this right now, or you're fired. You'll change it right away for them. But if your mate come and ask you to change something that's for the betterment of the relationship, now you want to give kickback. And why you trying to change me? And, and when you said that to me, that has stuck with me for years. And I just think that that's also a big problem with not staying disciplined, you know, not having the consistency, and being resistant to change, thinking that this thing gonna always stay how it started, and that's unrealistic.
One of the reasons I think a lot of relationships are failing nowadays is because they're not doing the work on the front end. And what I mean the work on the front end is preparing themselves before that person is even presented to you, who you are and who you aren't. What are you good at? What are you not good at in relationships? Mm-hmm. Dude, I know them. And some of them are uncomfortable to even talk about. But I get it. You have to be able to know what you're good at and what you're not, because unfortunately, so many people are gassed up on themselves that they go into relationships thinking that they got it all together, and they don't.
Right.
Just because you got a good car, you balling, you fine, and all of these things that are good, that, as you said, gets you through the door. Make me want the paint job. As you say. The paint job. Yeah, the paint job is good, but your engine is bogus.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's rickety, but I personally feel like we don't do enough work to prepare ourselves to be husbands and wives. You know, and it's a challenge. It's a day-to-day challenge. What am I going to do today to make my mate happy?
So many people have not been around, don't understand what it takes to be in a successful marriage, because they haven't had that. You know, a lot of us grew up in single family homes. We don't know what it is, and we don't have the right understanding. And a lot of that stuff I blame on just the mediums that we have that shows us this. You know, like someone mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was on topic or off topic, but shows like the Cosby Show that shows you what a good relationship's about. Because I blame a lot of stuff on things like, you know, these romantic comedies, Lifetime movies, even now reality TV, because it gives you unrealistic expectations of what a relationship or marriage should be like. You know, you look at these romantic comedies all the time. It's always saying, okay, you know, they get together, something comes up, they have a little disperse, and then at the end of the day, they come back and everybody's happily on. Right. But in real life, sometimes when you disperse, there is no coming back. So it's almost putting that into your mindset that it's okay for things not to work out for an extended period of time, because at the end it's going to be a happy ending, because that's what these TV shows, these movies, and these Lifetime movies tell us. So I think that we don't have enough positive imagery, which I'm glad which is why I wanted to be a part of this, to tell us, you know what, it's not going to be sunny days every day. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You know, I might have an attitude today. You know, my wife is going to have an attitude from time to time. Just because she's not in the best mood or she said something that I probably was wrong, it doesn't mean I need to go run out the door because I didn't get my way. Right. But I think people don't have that perception. They think, you know what, if it doesn't work right away, I'm out of here. There's somebody bigger and better. There's more people. There's 1 million women out here. Obviously, I go find another one. That's just not how easy it works. Right. But I just think our mentality, we haven't been put enough positive imagery of what a real relationship marriage should be. I think a lot of times people let people get in their ear, you know what, oh, I seen your buddy, he was hanging out with his friends, you need to leave him. No, that's not how it works. You can't let these outside influences, whether it's friends, sometimes it's family, sometimes it's parents, sometimes it's siblings, you got to be willing to live your own life and make your own decisions, because sometimes these people outside of you may not have the best interest for you. Everybody's not happy that you're happy. Right, and people don't realize that all the time.
Yeah, and depending upon where you're going in your life, sometimes you have to let people go, because not everybody has your best interest at heart.
Right. Now, before we get out of here, before we end today's show, I want each of you to share some keys for our audience out there on what you think are some keys to a successful relationship. And we'll start with Michael.
Well, after our last conversation, I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. Effective communication, honesty, and put a little bit of loyalty in it. And I think all of that really helps both people understand what we're in this together. And no matter what, like you today or not, I'm going to love you forever. And I think that's what makes relationships work.
Okay.
I would say I'd also agree with the effective communication. I think that's where it starts at. Also, I think you have to have respect on both ends. And, I also think that you got to be willing to compromise. A lot of people confuse sacrificing with compromising or giving in. I think there's things that you're going to compromise on in various relationships. And sometimes, you and your partner may be disagreeing. And the best move is just to, hey, let's let it go. I'll come back to battle another day. So.
Man, that's perfect. Because my thought is operating in a spirit of selflessness. As men, we're talking about being husbands and stuff like that. You have to operate in the spirit of selflessness. And it's not about you. It's about like how can I, even when it's arguing and debates, sometimes it's not about being right. It's about the situation being right.
And I would say both parties being committed to the relationship. At the end of the day, if you are both committed wholeheartedly to the relationship, no matter what comes about, you'll be able to work your way through it. And also with being committed to the relationship wholeheartedly, a lot of things you're not going to have to deal with, because being committed to the relationship means that you respect each other. Being committed to the relationships means that you're not going to have a bunch of trust issues because you have someone who's always having a wandering eye. So again, if you can be committed to the relationship, no matter what comes about, you'll always be able to talk, communicate, and be able to get past it and move on to bigger and better things.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Reggie, Michael, Ed, and Elimuel. We're just getting started with this. This is the beginning of something great. We're bringing stories like this and bringing situations to you that highlight the positive side of marriage, love, and relationships that you don't get to see. I think we covered a lot of ground today, and we hope that you got a lot out of this program. Again, at the end of the day, a relationship is what you make it. We want to thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Now we were talking about, you said something interesting, Mike, about, or I said if Halle Berry walked by. Now, other than your wife, if you got a hall pass, because we're talking about temptation, if you got a hall pass, who would you use your hall pass with that's a celebrity out there?
I'll pass.
Well, I don't need a hall pass right now because I'm single. But if I was married, it would definitely be Sanaa Lathan.
Sanaa Lathan. So we got a vote for Halle. We got a vote for Sanaa. Who you got? Ed?
You know what? I wasn't prepared for this. So let me have one of these peanuts. You know what? It would have to be something. I mean, it's not even just about. It just have to be something that I couldn't do normal. It probably wouldn't be one. I probably have to. That's a whole nother.
Nice.
That's a whole
Talk about it. Talk about it.
That's gotta be happening at the same time, and just get it all out the way, and let's get this party started. But